so much for coming on. For those of you who don't know, which is so unlikely, Achyuta Gopi is a great devotee. She's a singer, she is a writer, she's a TikTok influencer, because why not, right? Achyuta Gopi. So, yeah, Akikoji, good morning. Andrea, good morning. Good morning, Athena. Bhakti Center, bowing down to you, devotees. Emily, good morning. Hemangi, good morning. Good morning, Henry. Good morning, Jamuna Jaya. She gave a mind-blowing class yesterday, Jamuna Jaya. Kijai, good morning. Bhima Prabhu and his horses, good morning. Kartik, good morning. Matthew, good morning. Good morning, Narayani. Good morning, Pat. Good morning, Preeti. Good morning, Rohini. Shweta, good morning. Susan, good morning. Vandan, good morning. And people are still joining. Thank you so much for coming on. Ashuta Gopi, the floor is yours. I'm going to start the recording in a second.
Recording in progress.
Jai, so we should be good to go, yes?
Yes.
So of course, today is hopefully one of our most favorite days, the day of Ekadashi. And finally, what better Acharya, what better Vaishnav or Vaishnavi to speak about than the very queen of this day, Ekadashi Devi herself. But before we get to all of that, of course, we need a Mangala Charana. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Sri Ekadashi Devi ki jai. So today is known as Utpana Ekadashi, but it's also the Ekadashi which celebrates the birth of Ekadashi. So it becomes like a birthday as well. So not only is today already special and filled with incredible merit just for being Ekadashi, but now it is the very day that Ekadashi has taken her appearance. But what is that story? Why are we fasting? What's the big deal? I think for me, and for a lot of my friends and a lot of the Krishna kids in my community, following Ekadashi was something our parents kind of indoctrinated within us, kind of passed on. And for a lot of people, it became something that they did unquestioningly. Even though they had questions, they did it like mostly unquestioningly. But I found that as a lot of my friends started growing up and started making decisions for themselves, the big question was why? You know, we already have dietary restrictions. Now why are we taking on more? Why are we throwing more austerity into the mix. It kind of makes me think of Prahlad Maharaj talking to his friends. Anytime there was a play or a drama where Prahlad Maharaj, as a 5-year-old boy, would talk to his friends, they're like, we just want to play. Is life really meant for all the austerities at all times? So as I said, we already have dietary restrictions. We already have restrictions on what we can and can't do. And so a lot of us were thinking, why put more? Is it really that important? And I remember when I was young reading the different glories of different Ekadashis and reading the story about the birth of Ekadashi. And I kind of feel like as I relay this story to so many of my friends and as we talk about it and as we discuss why, it becomes less tapasya and more something we do because we show our appreciation, our gratitude for Shri Krishna, because he's done amazing things out of the kindness of his heart. So with that said, we'll start with the story of the birth of Ekadashi. So this story is told in many different places, in a few different ways, because Krishna is nothing if not unlimited. And within his unlimited pastimes, Srila Prabhupada makes a very interesting point that they don't always have to be chronological. So our Puranas and our Vedic stories don't run on chronology. They don't run on when did it happen. A lot of them run on why. Why? The why is more important than exactly when. So a lot of these pastimes will happen more than once. A lot of these pastimes will happen in many places at the same time more than once. My sister and I were reading during Kartik, and Sri Krishna has so many rasa dances. Normally you hear about one, but he has so many of them with so many different people. He's trying to fulfill all desires as many times as he can. And so this is the way it goes with even the story of Ekadashi. He's going to fulfill as many desires of as many souls as he possibly can in one go. So this story of Ekadashi is something which is very near and dear to my heart. This particular one comes from Garga Samhita, and then we'll talk about another one briefly. But this particular one comes from Garga Samhita, and it's one that I've kind of adapted into dramatic story form from Garga Samhita. So I was hoping that I'd be able to read it to you all and kind of just share this really wonderful story with all of you. Sri Radha sat in a beautiful forest grove among her many girlfriends, looking like the vibrant moon surrounded by twinkling stars. They were laughing with one another, seeking shelter from the hot afternoon sun under the benevolent, wish-fulfilling trees of Vrindavan. The gopis, the maidens of the village of Vrindavan, looked to their princess, Sri Radha, and spoke. O Radha, beautiful, gentle-natured, lotus-eyed daughter of King Vrishabhanu, please tell us what vow we may follow to attain the favor of Sri Krishna. At the mention of Krishna's name, Radha bent her head shyly, a crimson blush blooming gently across her cheeks. The Prince of Braj was the hero of every young girl's heart, the gopis included. It was no secret that although every maiden, young and old, ran to Krishna, he ran to Sri Radha. They knew that there must have been some secret to the hold that she had over the charming Gopa, and they yearned to know how they too could possibly catch his attention. They would do anything, take up any austerity, pray to any god, and endure any hardship if it meant that their Krishna would be pleased with them. Radhe, you have made Krishna, whom even the great demigods like Lord Brahma and Mahadev, they cannot approach him, but you have made him just like your submissive servant. Sri Radha covered her face with the fabric of her veil, momentarily humbled by their praise. After a heartbeat, she recovered her composure, and with a sweet, compassionate smile, the goddess, who accepted the role of a simple milkmaid in the transcendental village of Braj, spoke to her assembly of friends. To attain Sri Krishna's mercy, you should follow the vow of fasting on Ekadashi. In that way, you will make the Lord into your submissive servant. Of this there is no doubt. The gopis looked at their princess with rapt attention. They hung on to her every word as she described to them the vow which would grant them the perfection of their lives. Sri Radha held up a hand as she instructed her friends to listen carefully. The 11th day of each waxing and waning lunar cycle was reserved as a fasting day, where one voluntarily took on penance to please the Supreme Lord. But it also held the story of a compassionate goddess. With a wide smile, which shone like sun rays from the brilliant sun of Sri Radha's face, she began. During the waning fortnight of the month of Margashirsha, in order to kill the demon Mura, the divine goddess Ekadashi Devi was born from the body of Lord Vishnu. Indra, king of the heavens, along with all of the other celestial gods, approached the shore of the Milk Ocean and Shwetadweep, the effulgent island which was home to the Supreme Lord Vishnu, along with the goddess Lakshmi. This place was their safe haven, and the assembled demigods could feel their fears and anxieties washing off of them just as the waves from the ocean of milk receded from the shore of the ethereal island. Indra was sure that the Lord would be able to help them, and with that faith, he put forward his appeal. O Lord of the universe, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, we offer our respectful obeisances to you. Indra paused to close his eyes and touched his forehead to his joined palms in salutation. All of the accompanying devas followed, offering Lord Vishnu their respects. You are the creator, maintainer, and destroyer of this entire cosmic manifestation. You are the mother, father, and the supreme shelter of everyone. Indra glanced back, and the dejected look of the other demigods who were in trouble gave him the strength to continue. Indra extended his arms in supplication to the Lord, who was his only savior. Although it may appear as though we are the controllers of the many universal affairs, actually, we are merely your servants, put into our positions by you. We are always subordinate to you, our master, and are forever dependent upon your abundant grace. You are the supreme person. You are the protector of surrendered souls who rely on your shelter, just as the beautiful pearls of your necklace rest on your broad chest. O supreme mystic, the demigods have been driven out of our heavenly kingdom and have lost our home. We were ousted by a cruel and vicious demon and have fled to the earth planet. We are now plunged into an ocean of miseries without our kingdom. We beg for your aid. O Lord, be pleased with us. Indra was aware that with each plea, his voice rose and became more and more urgent. On hearing such a pathetic prayer from the king of the Devas, Lord Vishnu began to understand their dire situation. In a deep voice that seemed to come from everywhere, all at once, he spoke to Indra. Who is this invincible demon who has defeated even the demigods? What is his name and what is the source of his prowess? Please explain everything to me in detail. Do not fear. Lord Vishnu held his right hand up to Indra to give him the encouragement to speak, his soft red palm facing the demigods and blessing them with all fearlessness. Indra took a breath, feeling instantly relieved. There is a fierce demon named Mura. The great city of Chandravati is the capital of this horrible being, but he has now taken over our capital city of Amravati, and we have been unable to withstand his attacks. Not only has he overtaken our city, but he is living in our palaces and has even dared to take over the post of some of the most important devas like Agnidev, Yamaraj, and Varuna. He has rendered us ineffective. Although we have all joined forces, it has been impossible to defeat him. Completely exhausted, and with no other recourse, we have come to you. You are our only hope. Lord Vishnu's soft smile vanished. His eyes looked intense, and his gracefully curved eyebrows drew close together in annoyance. He cast a grave and sober glance over all of the demigods. When the Lord's beautiful eyes, so usually full of love, came to rest on Indra again, the king of the heavens could see the fire blazing behind them. The Lord was angry. My dear Indra, do not worry. I will personally kill this enemy of yours, and all of you should travel along with me to the city of Chandravati. The demigods released a collective sigh of relief and gratitude, and all at once they raised their clasped palms above their heads and murmured chants of thanks to the Lord who would once again come to their rescue. The demigods, rejuvenated by the presence of Lord Vishnu, marched on the city of Chandravati to do battle once again with Mura and his army of demons. The Lord defeated the demon horde, dispersing them as if they were nothing more than a swarm of gnats. However, when he engaged in battle with Mura himself, the Supreme Lord used various weapons, but the demon refused to die. Finally, Lord Vishnu engaged in hand-to-hand combat, wrestling with the demon for 10,000 years. Their blows sounded like the planets themselves were being crushed into powder, but the battle raged on, and the Devas watched with bated breath, hoping that their Lord would bring an end to their suffering soon. Overcome by the punishing blows of the Supreme Lord, Mura was defeated and lay unconscious on the blood-stained battlefield. Feeling tired, Lord Vishnu left Mura and the battlefield and journeyed to Badrikashram, high in the Himalayas, to rest. Once in Badrikashram, he entered a beautiful cave called Hemavati and laid down. He entered a deep slumber, his beautiful lotus eyes closing against the fatigue he felt from fighting for so long with the demon. Suddenly, the demon Mura, who had regained consciousness shortly after Lord Vishnu departed for the ashram, followed the Lord to his resting place and entered the cave. It was dark and quiet inside. But Mura could easily see the effulgent form of Lord Vishnu. Seeing his opponent sleeping so peacefully, the demon smiled evilly. This would be the perfect opportunity to put an end to Vishnu, who had destroyed all of his plans and many of his demon soldiers, not to mention countless demon rulers before him. Raising a sword, which glinted menacingly in the reflected light from the Lord's many jewels and shining armor, Mura could almost taste victory as he brought the sword down with a giant swoosh. Mura was momentarily blinded by a fierce, bright light which was almost as hot as it was intense. The light lit up every corner of the cave, but Mura was not to be deterred. He pressed forward with the edge of his sword, thinking this to be another trick of that crafty Vishnu, but no matter. There was nothing that would defeat him. As the light dimmed, Mura glanced down to see Vishnu with his eyes still closed, resting just as peacefully as he had been before. The demon's eyes widened as he wondered who or what it was that was currently stopping him. He looked up and into the face of a furious woman. The brightness of her form was still illuminating the inside of the cave. She had dazzling armor and was holding a sword firmly against the one he brought down to behead the savior of the demigods. She had various weapons, but it seemed as though no longer than Mura looked at her to try and decipher all of the details of his opponent, that her effulgence became brighter, until it was too painful to try and look directly at her. No matter whoever it was, Mura would do battle with them and he would win. He would stop at nothing until he had killed Vishnu. Time was lost to both the demon and the warrior goddess. As they fought, the clang of their swords relentlessly echoed off the inner walls of the cave. But Vishnu never stirred. Finally, Mura raised his sword high above his head, ready to deliver a death blow to the goddess. But she was quicker than the demon, and with blurring speed, her sword slashed through the air, and with it, Mura's head rolled at her feet, while his body was suspended in motion, freezing for a moment in his last battle stance, before crumpling to the floor of the cave in a lifeless heap. The goddess took a step back and gazed at the sleeping form of her beautiful lord with folded hands. His eyes opened, and her eyes dropped to the ground before her, overcome with a shy reverence. Lord Vishnu looked at the beautiful woman who stood before him. She had a beautiful face with what the Lord knew were wide lotus eyes, even as she glanced down and away from him. A golden crown adorned her head, and her black hair hung free in waves that flowed around her. She held many weapons, which were at rest, but her sword was dripping with blood. Lord Vishnu followed the trail and saw the body of the demon Mura lying forgotten on the floor of Hemavati cave. Astonished, Lord Vishnu looked toward the goddess again. Devi, who are you? His tone was gentle, and she looked up at him timidly, but in her eyes was the unmistakable courage and competence of a born warrior. My lord, I am born from your very own body. The moment this demon raised his sword to kill you, I have killed this wretched demon who sought to kill you as he saw you sleeping. She cast one last fierce glance at the demon before returning her gaze to the Lord. A beautiful smile curved onto his lips. O goddess, I am pleased with you. Ask for any benediction you desire. Lord Vishnu looked at the beautiful girl, waiting to hear her only desire. O my lord, if you are pleased with me and wish to give me a boon, then just as you have allowed me to protect you, who protects the entire universe with my very essence, by laying waste to this sinful demon, please give me the power to deliver any person who honors me on this day by eradicating any and all of their greatest sins. The goddess smiled once. So be it, Devi. You are my spiritual energy. Since you have appeared on this day of Ekadashi, your name shall be Ekadashi Devi. Anyone who follows the vow of Ekadashi honoring you will be relieved from all sinful reactions and attain inexhaustible, heavenly, and transcendental happiness. The Lord raised his right hand benevolently, fulfilling the wishes of the compassionate goddess Ekadashi Devi. Sri Radha looked at the group of stunned gopis. Their faces were bright with joy, hearing the pastimes of Lord Vishnu. Sri Radha smiled, full of secret joy. Even today, one can attain a kingdom like Kuvera, the god of wealth, and more, simply by following Ekadashi. This day is most dear to Lord Hari. My dear gopis, please know that Ekadashi is the queen of all holy days. No other holy day is her equal. Clapping in appreciation of Radhika's words, the other gopis began to speak amongst themselves, all resolving within their hearts that very moment to strictly and earnestly follow the words of their very own queen and observe the fast of Ekadashi, which would grant them their heart's desire, the favor of Govinda. So this is our wonderful goddess who protected the very protector of the universe and wanted nothing else but to bring happiness and joy to other living entities, whether they acknowledge her or not. I was just reflecting on this a few days ago. What I really love about Bhakti Yoga is the fact that in so many other spiritual paths, you ask the question, what happens to people who are in lands that haven't heard about my particular Lord? What happens to people who don't know about all of these wonderful festival days? What happens to people who don't know about bhakti or about spirituality? Usually the answer is, unfortunately, they are sentenced to eternal damnation. Here, within Bhakti Yoga, the answer is they attain the same result as one who would fast in full knowledge. How amazing is my Lord! There are so many instances and so many stories of Ekadashi where the people who fasted had no idea that it was a holy day. They had no idea that they were honoring Ekadashi Devi. But simply by somehow or other keeping some austerity on that day, somehow or other by accidentally staying awake at night, even if because they were arguing with someone else. Right? There are so many instances of living entities who stayed awake all night, either due to hunger, or some cold or misery, or due to arguments they were having with one another. The benefit still remains. So within Bhakti Yoga, what happens to those people who don't actually know the name of Krishna? Still, Krishna finds a way. Krishna finds a way to give causeless mercy to any and everyone. It's absolutely available to us all, whether we know it or not. The Yamadutas, the messengers of Yamaraj, and the Vaishnadutas have an intense battle for a soul within Srimad Bhagavatam, in the story known as Ajamil. And during this intense battle, the Vaishnadutas and Srila Prabhupada often bring up the point that whether or not you are aware, fire still burns. If you put your hand too close to it, doesn't matter. Fire doesn't care if you're a child or an adult, fire still burns. It is the same with devotional service. Whether we are aware of it or not, devotional service has the potency to burn away so many miseries, countless sinful reactions, which I think is something that we all want. I was kind of reflecting recently, and no one wants to think of themselves as like particularly sinful. At least it's that way with me. I usually don't want to think of myself as particularly sinful. Like, I've been doing pretty good things. But one thing I am is forgetful. I may not be sinful towards the Supreme Person, at least this go round, but I am forgetful of my Supreme Person. And I can think of that as something that will generate a source of suffering and misery in my life. Being forgetful of my Supreme Person. Because the material world is going to do what it does. It's going to cause trouble. But if I can somehow remember my Supreme Person, it makes it that much more worth it. Isn't it? We go through things, and they're hard things in life, but if you're going through them with family, with a tribe of people, with people who love you, somehow or other it makes it that much more manageable. So this place is not all fun and games and laughter. And there are going to be obstacles, even for the Supreme Person. He fought a demon for 10,000 years. And I don't think that those were even human years. They're celestial years. It's even longer. 10,000 years. And still it wasn't perfect. But going through them with someone that we love can make it that much more manageable. So it is often my prayer to Ekadashi Devi that I can remember my Supreme Person. I can just remember how compassionate my person is and how many loopholes, right? How many ways my Supreme Person is going to find just to try and remind me of who they are. That's my Krishna. And in yet another Ekadashi origin story, like, we have like all the Marvel superheroes and they have their origin story. Same thing. So in another Ekadashi origin story, we have Sri Krishna who journeys to the realm of Yamaraj. And when he arrives to see Yamaraj, he is greeted by Yamaraj, and Yamaraj is so happy to see him. He says, no one ever comes to visit me. My kingdom is not always the most pleasant to be around, as he is the superintendent of death and sinful reactions, and meting out justice and punishment or otherwise to all conditioned living souls. So he says, no one ever comes to visit me. But now the Lord of my heart, the very Lord of my life, is here. And he welcomes him so warmly with all of the articles of worship. And as they try to engage in a conversation, the Lord is stopped. He says, but my dear Yamaraj, what is that sound? I keep hearing an awful wailing. Yamaraj says, well, my lord, those are souls meeting their different punishments. My lord thinks, how terrible. When does it end? Yamaraj says, well, it doesn't. And the Lord is astonished. What do you mean it doesn't end? Everything has its beginning and ending point in this entire creation, with the exception of a few things. But everything has its beginning and end. When this suffering doesn't end, who ordered this? Yamaraj looked. You did. You didn't give me an end time for these conditioned souls. They are supposed to meet a reaction which is comparable to their first action. Some of these actions are so heinous and ongoing, and there are huge mountains of sins that there is no end to their suffering. And our Vedic Acaryas say that it is in that moment that in a flurry of compassionate feeling, Ekadashi Devi emerges forth from the body of Lord Vishnu. And they have a conversation. Oh Devi, what can I do for you? She says, oh my Lord, just allow me to ease the suffering of all of these individuals. Now, because this is exactly in line with what the Lord had in mind, he says, so be it. He's so ready to gift her with this boon. And with that, there's a stream of souls that now begin a mass exodus from this hellish condition. Now also, another being appears. He's deformed and not at all handsome. He's limping. It looks like he's got a lot of issues. And Lord Vishnu looks at this living entity and says, who are you? He says, my Lord, I am the personification of all sinful activity. I am known as Papa Purusha. Purusha being a living entity, Pap being sin. He says, my Lord, I too was born from you. After all, Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, O Arjuna, you should know all things come from me. Goodness and sinful activity, fame and infamy, victory and defeat. So he says, my Lord, I too have come from you. I too deserve your shelter. If all of these conditioned living entities are relieved of all of their suffering, where will I hide? Where will I reside? On this day of Ekadashi, if everyone is doing away with all of their sinful activities, what will happen to me? In yet another wave of compassion, Lord Vishnu looks at this Papa Purusha, the very embodiment of all sinful activities, and he doesn't simply blink him out of existence. He says, on this day of Ekadashi, where everyone is performing some sort of austerity, when everyone is remembering Ekadashi Devi and freeing themselves from all sinful activities and reactions, you can reside in food grains. And so it is said that the Papa Purusha goes to reside in grains on Ekadashi. And for this reason, it is said that we don't eat grains and beans on Ekadashi. A lot of people don't eat anything on Ekadashi. And so the Lord thought it's a pretty safe place. A lot of people are doing austerities. A lot of people are not eating anything. They're just focusing on hearing and reciting the glories and the pastimes of our Supreme Lord Vishnu. Now, of course, there are also scientific reasons. There are also Ayurvedic reasons that are given. But I like these reasons. I don't need another reason. These reasons make sense here for me. And I find that the more it makes sense here, even and especially when it doesn't make sense here, that works better for me in the long run. I don't need a scientific reason to make sense of my Lord's compassion. And that was enough for Ekadashi Devi as well. She did not need another reason. Simply the Lord's one thought of compassion for saving all of these embodied living entities was enough for her. Enough for her to say, I'll give my life to protect all of these living entities. All they have to do is knowingly or unknowingly honor me twice a month. That's it. Now, so many of my friends, like I said, they'd heard the scientific reasons. Makes the diet lighter, helps the body run smoother, helps the life airs do all kinds of wonderful things. But what often impresses upon us is my Lord's compassion. This is the Lord who will break the rules of the universe as much as he possibly can, just to alleviate our suffering, just to remind us how much he loves us. And now we have not just a day, but a very wonderful and compassionate goddess, equipped with all the weapons of Sri Vishnu, equipped with a beautiful sword and a dazzling helmet, ready to stand between us and our obstacles. All we have to do is let these reasons be enough. Let that compassion be enough to spur us on in our devotional service. Even if our devotional service is as simple as staying away from grains and beans on a day like Ekadashi. So thank you so much. I want to make sure that we have time for comments, questions, well wishes, boons of benediction that you'd like to bestow upon me.
Hare Krishna, a wonderful class, Nishpita Gopi. So if anybody has a benediction or a boon to give us, please, now is the time. If there's anything that you liked about the class, please reflect back. Don't be shy.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Chita Gopi. I don't have the power or the purity to give you a boon, but you have forever my gratitude for every time you appear and make Ekadashi a most beautiful day, and thank you for your beautiful rendition of both of these reasons, and they do make sense here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rita, go ahead, unmute yourself. Okay, well, Shweta is unmuting herself. Does anybody else have a reflection or a question? We have some appreciations in the chat. Sundarananda Prabhu says, wonderful Ekadashi story. Yes, Sundarananda, it was like watching a movie.
That's the best compliment.
Says, what's that? What was that?
I was saying that's the best compliment. If it sounded like you were watching a movie, I feel like I did my job.
It did. Yeah, Shweta, unmute yourself, please. We can see you.
Hare Krishna, am I audible?
Yeah.
Please, a little bit disturbance is going on. There's a wedding outside, so much noise. Am I still audible?
Go ahead, Shmita. Go ahead.
Krishna Mataji, Koti Pranam. First of all, Mataji, I wanted to tell you that this whole entire time I have been hearing your kirtan, and it has been so ecstatic hearing your kirtan. So, my question was, Mataji, recently I've been observing that especially the young generation, they found their own modified ideas while doing bhakti. So during Janmashtami, I met some youngsters and they were telling me that, oh, it's Krishna's birthday, so it should be feast. There should be no fasting because it's Krishna's birthday. So they were not fasting for Janmashtami. And then same thing for Ekadashi. They're like, no, Prabhupada said we need to focus on sadhana. And if I fast, I can't focus on sadhana. So how to prioritize these things? Because we have to fast, and you told us glories of fasting. So how to prioritize? Because people are modifying rules and objectives in the name of their bhav. So how to understand this, Mataji? Is sadhana the priority or fasting the priority? Thank you.
Yeah. You know, one amazing thing about bhav is that we simultaneously have some and none at all. We have some wonderful feelings toward Krishna, but we have no adhikar. And, sometimes when you put in the Sanskrit terms, it gets a little bit removed, but there's something about the word adhikar or qualification, which has such a strong sound when you say it with the Sanskrit term, we have a wonderful feeling toward Krishna, but we lack the qualification for follow through. And so that feeling comes and goes whimsically. It is there one day, and I chant loads of japa, and the next, my mind has taken me on another ride somewhere completely different, and I miss the point completely. So which one is more important? Is there any bhav that is separate from our sadhana though? And I'll tell you briefly what I mean by that. Take for instance a person in love in a relationship, and we've seen it. You have a friend or someone, they get into a relationship and they stop hanging out with all their other friends. This friend gets into the relationship, and next thing you know, they're living on love, It's like, hey, did you eat lunch? It's like, I don't know. I was just too busy texting the person. It didn't matter. And it's like, hey, what time did you even go to sleep yesterday? I don't know. We were in different time zones, so I stood up till 5 in the morning. It's fine. This should be our mood, our reasoning with sadhana and bhav. Our feelings should be like that, those first stirrings when you're falling in love with someone. And if you've never had that experience, feel free to dive all in with Krishna. Like, give yourself over to it completely. Feel free. Just try it. Make it scientific, make a hypothesis, do a whole lab report, see if it works. But feel free to dive all in with Sri Krishna. The Goswamis did not care about eating because they were so wrapped up in rendering these pastimes of Sri Krishna. Rupa Goswami would write and write and write and forget about eating. But why? Because he was making dramas about the pastimes of Sri Radha Krishna. On the days of Janmashtami, are we thinking, oh yeah, I should be feasting, and it's only thinking about us? Or are we spending our time saying, okay, there should be a feast, so let me spend all day cooking? Is it really 56 preparations, like made with awesome love? And then after cooking those preparations, have we thought, okay, on my friend's birthday, I'm going to get to know as much about my friend as possible. So we've stayed reading story after story after story about Sri Krishna. From Krishna Bhagavatam, we have so many sources. Or is all we're focused on our own personal agenda? Krishna's birthday shouldn't be about us. It should be about our friend. And those stories should be making love blossom in our hearts so much that we're like, okay, one more, just one more story because it's so sweet. And you read one more, and then okay, just one more because it's so sweet, and then you read one more. Are we discussing with one another, or are we just coming up with like loopholes? And I'm guilty of this myself. Full Ekadashis where they have been dedicated not to the glories of Krishna, but to the glories of like arrowroot flower and quinoa flour and flowers from all kinds of things that I didn't even know could make flour. Or am I dedicating it to things like this, coming together in sanghas, speaking to one another, thinking, this is the best way to wake up early. This is the best way to spend my time. Okay, just one more pastime. Okay, 5 more minutes. So sweet. This is how we balance our sadhana with our feeling. Our sadhana should back up our feelings. They should give them the power of follow through. Otherwise, we get pretty lost. And then our feeling is here or there. Sometimes there, sometimes not. For me, so many days not. But we've seen it. We're able to binge watch so many things. We're able to stay up. We're able to... These are actually technically mystic powers. These are mystical potencies. Are we using them in the service of Krishna? Or are we using them in the service of our senses? And I worship Govinda because he is the one who gives pleasure to the senses. I'm not in ignorance of the fact that my senses are still there. And my mind says, we should figure out a way to serve them. But can we redirect it? Can we redirect it to finding out what's the real meaning behind this? It's not just some austerity. It's not just some inconvenience. But now, why are we fasting? What are we doing instead of eating? Can we dedicate that time to making a stronger connection with our most dear beloved friend? These days become like relationship counseling for us and Krishna. And we need a lot of counseling. So we have so many holy and spiritual days. We should be fasting in a mood of gratitude and absolute joy. All I have to do is fill up my time with this. That's all my person is asking of me. And then they're saying, and don't worry, I'll remove every obstacle. I will give you everything that your heart desires, even before you ask it, because they already know. All I have to do is give just this little bit. So it's not which one is more important. It's that they go hand in hand. Our feeling and our spiritual practice should go hand in hand in such a way that we recognize why we're doing something. And that reason really enters into our hearts and comes from a place of genuine feeling. Our practice should embolden, give life to our feeling. And our feeling should give strength to our practice. So we can't have one without the other. But also we have to be real with each other and with ourselves and know when we're just making excuses. And we can also realize that as many excuses as I make to myself, I have the ability to do better. I have the ability to treat the other person that I'm in a relationship with better. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, Shweta, you should go back to those youngsters and challenge them. Tell them it's not about their senses, it's about Krishna having fun. And when Krishna is having fun, we're having fun. Did I get it right, Chipagopi? Yes. Okay, Athena has her hand raised. Athena, let's go.
Hare Krishna, Gopi, Mataji, Dandavat Pranams. Thank you so much for a wonderful session always. My question, well, first, I appreciate these stories because I think, like most people, we've only heard the second one, which is Pop taking given shelter in grains, and so therefore on Ekadashi we should fast from grains where beans came in, so we don't incur sin. But actually, the first story about Ekadashi Devi, it's how she will free us from sin when we fast on this day. But I think that's my main question is, are we truly actually observing Ekadashi properly? And you hear that, and can we actually do that now? Because you hear that a true Ekadashi was fasting for 3 days. The first day to prep for Ekadashi, the Ekadashi day itself, and then the third day to transition out of Ekadashi. So to truly observe Ekadashi is full fast for 3 days. And then then it's somehow dumbed down to just fasting for grains and beans. But from my understanding, it's again this original fast, and then just out of, I would say, as a default, well, if you're fasting from everything, then you automatically are fasting from grains. So then, sure, you can take shelter, and so therefore, you incur sin if you eat grains. But that will just never happen because you're fasting for 3 days. But you look at today, we don't fast 3 days. We're not even truly observing the true Ekadashi. And then comes to the question that Sweeta Mataji had. Well, is it really the fast or just remembering Krishna? And then that just becomes another thing where it's like, well, we can't fast for 3 days. And then now people, we don't fast from grains and beans. So just remember Krishna. And that reminds me of the verse Bhagavad Gita 18.66. Surrender unto me, I'll deliver you from all sin. So the question is, these rules, and we have a lot of rules and regulations. Can we even truly follow are we even following any of them properly today? And I can go into many other examples of, for example, brahmacharis, really brahmacharis, because originally brahmacharis were supposed to live in the hermitages of the guru and serve them day and night, and that just doesn't happen anymore. So I would love to hear.
Yeah, we're all a joke. We're all a joke here, Tina.
But then we can't follow it. Then it's like we can't truly follow it. So then are we even truly following any of these?
Yeah, let Achyuta Gopi answer. That's a curved one.
And I think I really enjoyed that question because that question is so much of, but does it really work? Does it actually count? Does what I'm doing actually matter? And the answer is absolutely yes. And sometimes the question we can, it's like you said, it gets dumbed down, and that's such a intense phrase, right? Dumbed down. You're like, so then it loses its potency, doesn't it? No. The wonderful thing about Krishna is that he is able to fulfill all of the needs of the people, even if it is dumbed down, and still not lose his potency. He's able to, what they say is, he's able to perform any function of any of his senses or body with any of his other senses or body, which is how our Lord eats through seeing. But that also means that he can protect us, deliver us, give us love and shelter through any of his parts and parcels, through any of his, just a fraction of his effulgence. So yes, originally Ekadashi was done 3 days. Dashami, Ekadashi, Dwadashi. Dwadashi is the day that you finally wrap up your fast and resume your prior activities. But can any of us do that today? Yeah, there are actually some people who are doing it, which kind of always makes me feel like, well, way to go, thanks a lot. Kind of takes away that nobody can do that. Yeah, there are people today who are still maintaining their fasts that way. Does that mean that you have to? No. What I love about this is that, and what you said is true. We normally hear the first part, right? Pop residing in grains. That's not the point of that story for me. The point of that story for me is not that Pop is residing in grains, so I shouldn't eat them. The point of that story is Krishna will meet you where you're at. Even if you are the personification of sin. Krishna doesn't say, look, dude, I can't help you, go away. Krishna says, okay, fine. No matter what, even if it seems silly, I'll make a place for you. That's the point of that story for me. So the point of this for me, for all of us, even if you can't do it properly, even if you are the personification of sin, The fact that you have sought out Krishna's mercy and you've sought out his shelter is enough. Sri Ram says, for anyone who comes and seeks my shelter, I have to give it to them. Even if Ravan came right this moment and asked me for shelter, I'd stop the whole war. I'd stop the entire siege of Lanka. I would end the entire thing right here. And I would give him shelter. Question is, are we going to? Are we going to? So for me, that point is not like, oh, okay, good. Shouldn't eat grains. The point for me was, Krishna will meet you where you are at. If you are honest and sincere and authentic with Krishna and you say, I can't do all of it. I have to eat. But I can stay away from grains and beans. Krishna says, great. I'll meet you where you're at. If you are a person who says, I got that covered. Hardly eat grains and beans anyway. I'll eat once a day. Krishna says, perfect. I'll meet you where you're at. And above all of it, you hear so many times within Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes big ideas really simple by saying, or you could just remember me. These are the same questions Arjuna was asking, right? Look at all these yoga philosophies, Krishna. Can we even do them properly? You're telling me in order to be a yogi, I'd have to go to the forest and sit with a straight spine and meditate on the tip of my nose with eyes half closed, bring my life air up to between my eyebrows and do all this stuff, and it seems impossible. Krishna always says, yes. That's not comforting. I just said it was impossible. Yes, it is impossible. Especially the further along you get in time, it's completely impossible. Then what am I supposed to do? Just remember me, friend. That's it. The more we remember Krishna, the more it urges us to make a relationship with Krishna. The more we make a relationship with Krishna, the easier it is to put my selfish needs a little bit further back and to do things genuinely that are acts of service. To genuinely do things that will bring joy to the heart of Krishna. All of these gopis are simple girls, right? Let's not forget, this started because they asked Radharani, you seem to have brought Krishna under your complete control. And we know nobody controls Krishna. How? So just by fasting on Ekadashi. You can get loads of benefit, right? Most of the time, we're focused on clearing our sinful debts. But here the gopis were focused on gaining the favor of Govinda. So yes, we can clear our debts. Yeah, we can get untold wealth, spiritual and material. We can get wealth like Kubera. It's promised already, but that's a byproduct. Really what we're after is the favor of our dearest friend. Can we think of our austerity like that? Can we think of our austerity like, I would wait. I'll wait days, weeks, months for a person that I love. We see it all the time. There are so many love stories. I'll wait for forever, right? Or are we kind of like Rose and Jack on the Titanic plank? There's only room for one on the door. Never let go, and then we let go right after. We get to choose which one we are. Are we thinking about our person? Are we engrossed in thinking about our person? Because like I said, the more you think about the person, somehow food doesn't even matter. We've seen people in love. Food doesn't matter. Sleep doesn't matter. Other people don't matter. Nothing is going to get in the way of them meeting the person that they're in love with. So, are we thinking of this as a relationship? Or are we simply thinking of it in terms of clearing our own moral debts? I think the more that we jump in with both feet, right? And Srila Prabhupada said this, you can't get wet if you don't dive into the ocean. So try it. And whether you think your fasting is perfect or imperfect, I promise you, If we do it with a sincere and grateful heart, it is enough. Krishna was willing to meet Arjuna where he was at. Krishna was willing to meet Bhima where he was. And sometimes you hear astounding things about these people. They were drinking wine, and you're like, wait a second. We can't drink wine now. And they were pure devotees? Yep. Krishna is willing to meet them where they are, according to what's actually, authentically, sincerely, genuinely happening in their lives. Srila Prabhupada said once in a purport within Bhagavad Gita, he says, Krishna is the original taste of all refreshing liquid things. So even if you are a drunkard and you're thinking, fine, Krishna is the enjoyable quality of this wine. The more you think like that, eventually Krishna will handle the rest. So this is why, of course, there's not just one Ekadashi. You get 2 a month. Because he knows it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint, and a lifelong thing. We are in lifelong recovery, right? Constantly needing that reinforcement. Because maybe we didn't get it perfect last time. But we have another chance in 2 weeks to get it just a little bit more perfect than we did the last time. We have that chance in another 2 weeks to just try and focus a little bit more than we did the last Ekadashi. And eventually, Krishna will handle everything. The more that we dive in, the more he handles it. Because he is reciprocal. He is reciprocation personified. So the more that we think to ourselves, you know what? Krishna, I am doing this for you. Krishna, I am doing this because I adore you. Because I'm thinking about you. Because I'm so grateful. It's something that I've wanted to do and I've kind of started doing. The day after Ekadashi is kind of a gratitude day. And instead of kind of thinking about all the stuff that I had to do, I try to think back on what I'm grateful for over the last 2 weeks. And before Ekadashi, I try and rack up, like, what happened these 2 weeks? What happened this last fortnight? How many ways did Krishna save my life? How many ways did Krishna show me he's working in my life? How many miracles were there in these 2 weeks? And with that in mind, I try and follow an Ekadashi. I want them to be gratitude-filled days, so that every Ekadashi is like Thanksgiving. But because my friend is showing up, and he won't show up unless I'm looking for him, because he's reciprocal. So if I'm not looking for him, he hides. But if I'm looking, we can take it on the absolute most faith that he will show up over and over and over again. So I hope that simply and complicatedly answered your question. He's willing to meet us wherever we are. And the fact that he gives shelter to the personification of sin should be enough for us to know that, okay, at least I'm not that guy. So Krishna is willing to make space for us. And not just, I made space for you and I never think about you again. He makes space and he loves us through it.
Thank you so much for such an incredible explanation answer. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Achyuta Gopi, for packaging this wisdom for us in this one-liner. Krishna will meet you where you're at. Wonderful. Yeah. So we have Bhima Prabhu followed by Saradiya. Bhima Prabhu once can't wait until he, let me see.
Yeah.
Until he's born again, so he can try to become like Achyuta Gopi. So Bhima Prabhu, unmute yourself.
I am. Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to actually be a real devotee who's so enthusiastic and who's obviously bubbling with love. Though she may try to deny it, it's apparent. It's so obvious. But I just wanted to say that we tend to, intellectualize these sacrifices, or well, an image came to me when I was a little kid. I remember running into a little girl in a field. This was in Maine, and she had a daisy in her hand. I was younger. She was older than me. And she had a daisy in her hand, and she was plucking the petals, and she was going, he loves me not. He loves me, he loves me not. And then she, went around the whole whirl of the the daisy, and she got to he loves me not, and and I remember just like she was sitting there, with a very sad look on her face, and I asked, who, what are you doing? And she talked about Mark, my friend, and older friend, and I said, yeah, he love, of course we're kids, we don't know about this, but yeah, he likes you a whole lot. He's always talking about you. And she smiled and she was overjoyed and threw the daisy away. So we have somebody, we have Prabhupada, we have his books constantly telling us not how much Krishna loves us, how beautiful he is, how he's always there for us. As Achuta Gopi says, he'll meet you where you're at. And we always have someone telling us that Krishna is there for us, and we don't need to parse it out. We don't need to take the petals from the flower of our intellect and try to figure our relationship with Krishna. We just need to accept that there's a friend nearby in the form of guru or sadhu sangha, fellow devotees, or just be still and look at this wonderful nature, despite its ephemerality. This everything is a miracle. Chutukopi said, how many miracles happened to me this week? And we all as devotees, the thing that makes us strongest is that, Krishna reciprocates. We all have private little stories, more and more and more as we progress, that produces taste and affection, because Krishna's, we start actually paying attention to Krishna's reciprocation. But Krishna reciprocates in our every breath. We didn't create our lungs. We didn't create the heart that beats. We didn't create the thoughts and the ability to think about him. So just accepting, his presence right here and now, and start at zero, and clear your mind of all doubt, and you will be happy. And that's all I need. That's all I want to say, because it just popped into my head, that little girl when she was talking, because she had the enthusiasm of that little girl about Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Oh, that was gorgeous. Feel like that's it. Just tag team lectures are the thing now.
Yeah, Bhima Prabhu is very poetic, very deeply realized and very poetic. Thank you, Bhima Prabhu, for contributing to class every time. Okay, we have a question about hell, right? From Saradia Rasa, Devi Dasi. I hope. Saradia Dasi, are you still around?
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. Yes, I'm here. Do we still have time for a question?
Yeah, but just one last one.
Last one. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the class, Achita Gopi. I really appreciate the pastime about Ekadashi Devi. And what really always touches me is that she asks for a benediction for everyone else. And I just find that's very inspiring for me. And then what we see in that story, in which he really emphasizes how Krishna is always looking for opportunities to help us. Like Acarya uses this opportunity to help us, essentially. And, to kind of like, if you think about it, we might be doing so many things wrong, but then if we just fast on Ekadashi for just one day, then, we're basically just forgiven. Now, then what really, I find very perplexing then is, why, on the one hand, when Krishna has that, such a compassionate side, and that's what when I think about Krishna, I always think about how kind he is, how gentle he is. But on the other hand, we still have the existence of hell. And for me, it's very hard to understand, like, why would a personality as loving as Krishna, have to create hell? And, when we read, I can't remember what section of Bhagavatam is, but you'll know the section
Fifth
of Bhagavatam
canto.
which describes hell. Then
Yeah.
what always perplexes me is that sometimes there seems to be kind of like not very severe sins, that, result in quite severe punishments. So how do we reconcile this? This like immensely compassionate Lord, but then, also, I suppose not the creator of hell, but the person who at least mandated that there should be a hell and this severe punishment.
Yeah. But if we look at this material creation as a whole, which is not even the full universe, right? Brahma Samhita tells us if we were to put this entire cosmos into quadrants, this material creation is just 1/4. 1/4 of the entire makeup. The other 3/4 are spiritual worlds. How amazingly wonderful is that? That's one. And two, it's like we have this wonderfully compassionate being. Why do you need a hell? Because people are people. Embodied souls, if we look back and we look at Vedic literatures, there are things that have been happening for a really long time. Plundering, pillaging. There have been horrible abuses, rapes, all kinds of things have been happening for a really long time. You'll get instances in Satya Yuga. I'm like, Satya Yuga? Really? So, we might romanticize other yugas, but it seems like even in other yugas, the material world was doing what it does. It was being material worldy. Side effects. So, if you think about it, if you just think about it right now, you can hear about atrocities that occur. And they usually make us really, really angry. Usually after the atrocity has already occurred. A tragedy happens and we get really angry and we think something's got to be done. And then a person or persons or a group, they go on trial and they get set free. And then we think, but I thought I knew the whole story. How is this possible? The justice system got it wrong. This person got it wrong. That person got it wrong. Well, how do these people get away with it? They don't. Material nature is extremely strong. Material nature is very stringent with her rules and regulations. So why would we need a hell or 26 hellish planets? Planets, not just like, one little village. Planets dedicated to reformatory suffering. Because people are people. And no one gets away with anything. And so what may seem like a very simple offense, when you get down to the heart of it, to somebody else, that was not just a simple offense. To somebody else, it gets bigger. It was an abuse of power, an oppression, aggression, even a microaggression. So for somebody else, these were not small, insignificant things. And we usually figure that out when it's us that it happens to. Right? When somebody is oppressing us or committing atrocities against us. And everybody else thinks, well, that's really minor. It's like, and I explained this once to a friend of mine, it's like when you walk into a room and they immediately say, oh, well, come on, Mataji. And you kind of hear the tone of the word, which is supposed to be filled with reverence, and it's dripping with something else. It seems so minor. But when it's you experiencing it, in your heart, you're like, it wasn't minor, it was huge, and now I also actually hate the word Mataji. Not because of the word, but because of how it's been wielded. So sometimes we might think that these actions are small, but how they are wielded as weapons is huge for someone, for someone's heart, for someone's being, for their identity, for their individual soul. So now we have hellish planets, but our Lord is also so compassionate that he goes and he says, but this can't be forever. Very few things are for forever. Love for him is one of those things that's forever. He's like, but this can't be for forever. Their sins aren't even forever. It can't be. Karma is not eternal. And so I love the fact that he balances all of that out. And, you know, one might think, oh, it seems a little far-fetched, though, just to think that you could be the worst human, and then you could fast on Ekadashi, and it's all just eradicated. But it's true. It works. Oh, but then how is it that we still see those people being horrible people? Well, because they didn't follow through. This fasting is supposed to awaken a love, a spiritual love within us, which propels us on a spiritual path. If we continue just sinning, chanting, as the Yamadutas and Vaishnavutas had the conversation with each other, then you're heaping water on a fire. Even too much ghee on a fire will douse it. Which is not to say that, you know, balance out your sins and your good things. But these fasting days and all of these things that we do, they should be balancing us out, so that we have less propensity in our hearts for wanting to control other people, for wanting to rule over other people, for wanting to abuse and oppress other people. So ultimately, all of the things that happen come from a desire, which Krishna says, it is lust only, which drives every living entity. And usually we think of lust open and shut case. It's like romantic or sexual or something. But no, a hankering, a desire. There's a desire behind all of these actions, even the atrocious ones. If somebody is looking to have power over somebody else, there's a desire for something that's lacking. Connection, acceptance, importance, just being seen. That desire, being unfulfilled and unmet, then begins to fester and turn somebody into the worst versions of what they could be. So it's our job to look at those desires behind the things that we're doing, to question. This is why Srila Prabhupada says, you know, we have the ability to reason. This is why these life forms, the human life, is so rare and so much further above the others. We have the ability to reason, to question. Wait a second. Why am I doing this? What am I really here for? What is the desire behind this? Am I looking for an escape, and that's why I'm binge watching 6 hours of America's Got Talent? But why? What is that escape, though? What's the desire behind it? The desire to maybe just stop thinking because the world is too much. But all of those desires can be dovetailed. If I'm thinking, but I have a friend who loves me more than anything, and they're just waiting to spend time with me and to hear from me, then maybe I can turn my mind off. Maybe I can turn off all the thoughts just by reciting their names, just by singing their names. Because if I could binge watch America's Got Talent for 6 hours, imagine if I could like binge chant for 6 hours. It would make much more of a difference. And it would actually serve the desire that was festering. That's why they say that devotional service not only eradicates sins, but it starts a reformatory process, right? As I said, lifelong recovery. Right? I have an addiction to serving my senses. And I think I'm going to need more than 12 steps. I'm going to need a lot more than 12 steps. But every day, we're in recovery. And devotional service not only will eradicate that, but it'll eradicate the desire to want to do those things, to further my own. Like, oh, I think this will serve what I'm lacking. No. But devotional service will. Devotional service will not only serve what I'm lacking, but it will remind me that I'm actually not lacking. As part and parcel of Krishna. Each one of us has the propensity to be perfect and complete within ourselves. with Krishna at our side, with our tribe of devotees. And in this case, just all of these perfections come together to make the most perfect, which is our devotional service to each other and to the Lord of our hearts. So why do we need a hell or 26 hells? Because people are people, but it's not eternal.
Jai, mic drop. Shri Gopi. Devi Prabhu ki jai. Ekadashi Devi ki jai. Thank you everyone for asking your questions, giving your boons. We need them. And Shri Gopi, so many takeaways. Krishna will meet you where you're at. We may need more than 12 steps. I like that one. Never heard that one. That's a good one. Thank you. All right. So have a blessed day, everybody. See you all back again tomorrow. Srimad Bhagavatam is going on. It's never gonna end. Anytime. Yeah, and Achyuta Gopi will see you again next Ekadashi. And we want to see you on America's Got Talent. Watch that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're gonna close it down. Thank you. Hare Krishna.